It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I had the privilege to interview the Indianapolis Colts Director of Marketing, Senior Marketing Manager, Erika Austin. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to work in professional sports and college sports?
Yes. Well, to be honest, I didn't know that I wanted to work in the sports industry because, quite frankly, when I was going through college in the late 80s, early 90s, the opportunity to work in sports really didn't present itself for women. And I didn't know about all of the opportunities that were available in sports. I majored in journalism. And back then, when you majored in journalism, your route typically meant you were going to work for a newspaper or you were going to work for a TV station. And I really didn't want to work for a newspaper at the time. I really did want to be a sideline reporter, whether that was for the local news or for a sports broadcast system. But I was always told that I wouldn't be able to do that because they would have to send a mail with me to carry my camera or to carry my equipment. I wouldn't have access to locker rooms. Most athletes wouldn't take me seriously. And so I was really stuck after getting my journalism degree with what do I do with this degree? And thankfully, I had an internship with the United States Canoe and Kayak Team, which was actually the offices were housed in Indianapolis in the Pan Am Plaza with all of the other Olympic governing bodies. And my internship was with the communications department, and a wonderful gentleman by the name of Craig Boner really saw my potential and invested in my career and introduced me to sports communications. And that's how I found out about that career. And that's when I decided, okay, I think I really like doing sports communications, and the rest, as I say, is history. So I honestly did not know much about all the different areas of sports and in the administrative areas of sports until after I had that internship with the USCKT and met Mr. Craig Boner.
What was your time like as the Assistant Sports Information Director for Georgia Tech?
It was great. So my plan, before I got to Georgia Tech, I was at South Carolina, University of South Carolina, as a sports information director. I think that position has now changed its title to maybe sports communications director. But I was at South Carolina. I knew that the Olympics was coming to Atlanta, and my goal was to work the Olympic Games. And so I figured that my best shot to do that was to locate myself in Atlanta. And the timing worked out where the position opened up at Georgia Tech for the same position that I had at South Carolina. So I applied for the position, luckily got it, and was able to work the Olympic Games as a statistician for the USA basketball team. So it was very exciting to work the Olympics, to be there at the gold medal men's basketball game, get to see the women's basketball game, get to see the other countries competing against us. And Georgia Tech was a great opportunity for that. They had a great athletic administration there. It was a combination of gifted athletes that really encompassed the student athlete component, very high intelligent athletes, and very high competitive athletes as well. So it was great. I loved my time at Georgia Tech.
What did you learn about being an assistant sports information director that you didn't know already?
I think the best part about the job, and I tell anybody this that's looking to start a career, I think the sports information, sports communication area is a great place for any entry-level person that is looking to start in sports, because one, you get to learn so much about all the different sports. When I started, I only really knew about basketball. I didn't know much about football. I surely didn't know much about lacrosse, softball, baseball. I knew about tennis, but being a sports information director and being able to write and promote those athletes, those sports, those coaches, the school, you really get to learn a lot about those individual sports, what are the challenges of those sports, what you need to be successful in those sports. You get to learn about the coaching, their philosophies. And then you also, a lot of times that sports information person, when you are hosting a home event, you are the game management person. So you are working with the marketing department, you're working with the events department, the facilities area. You're really touching all aspects of an athletic administration. So I think that is the best part of having that role as a sports communications manager, director, assistant director, whatever your title might be in that area, is that you're really immersed in the complete components of an athletic department.
What was it like personally working with the NCAA on the biggest stage, working for the NCAA?
Working for the NCAA, I think, one, I absolutely love it. I thought that would be the end of my career. As I was trying to map out my career, I thought, okay, I would start at a university, I would work at a university, and then I thought I would transition to a conference office and, work at a conference office. And then at the end of my career, I would go to the NCAA and retire with the NCAA. I actually got to the NCAA earlier than what I had anticipated, but I think the biggest thing about working at the NCAA is, for me, I truly believe in their mission of trying to level the playing field for the student athletes and be an advocate for the student athletes. I think the hardest part of working for the NCAA is the brand itself, and those that maybe not understand the structure of the NCAA and what their role and mission is. At times you always felt like you were defending the brand. And that was easy for me to do because I did believe in the mission of the NCAA. I just think that a lot of times when you're working there, you really have to defend the brand. You have to do a lot of separating fact from fiction. But I think that any athletic administrator that truly understands the mission and the goals of supporting the student athlete and their well-being on and off the playing field would understand what the NCAA is trying to accomplish.
What was your time like working with the Middle Tennessee State as the Assistant Director of Compliance and Licensing?
That was interesting, actually. A very good friend of mine, Chris Massaro, is the athletic director at Middle Tennessee State University. And Chris and I started our athletic careers early at South Carolina. His career went up a lot faster than mine, and he became an athletic director. And he called me one day and said that he had a position open as the assistant athletic director for compliance. And quite honestly, compliance is a part of an athletic administrative role. You are there really to make sure that the student athletes, the coaches, administrators are following NCAA bylaws. And quite honestly, I did not want any part of that position. It was not my goal to learn a 600-page book of NCAA bylaws and making sure that everybody is compliant around those bylaws. I respect that compliance position. I praise anybody that is in that position because it is a tough a tough position to stay up on all those rules and regulations and to enforce those rules and regulations. Oftentimes you're looked at as the no person. And Chris came to me and said that they had that position open and was interested in hiring me for that position. And I immediately told him, like, Chris, I don't know. I've tried to stay away from compliance. I've worked just about every area of an athletic department, but really was not looking to do compliance at all. But Chris convinced me that, if I was going to continue my role as an athletic administrator and one day be either a senior women's administrator or deputy AD or athletic director, that having that compliance background would really position myself well. And so we talked for a while, almost a year, and then I finally caved in and decided to take the position. It was a leap of faith. I wouldn't have done it at any other university except for Middle Tennessee because of Chris Massaro. He was very patient with me. The whole staff was very patient with me. The coaches were great. I learned very quickly the bylaws and how they worked within an athletic administration. So it was a new career path for me. And I'm thankful to this day that I took that leap of faith and that Chris and the administration believed in me to learn that process. I learned also that I'm not in the compliance realm for the long haul.
What was the transition like from going from compliance to working with Purdue in the trademark and licensing?
Yeah, it was a very easy transition because when I was at Middle Tennessee, they needed a licensing director, and Chris knew that I did licensing at the NCAA for 7 years. So, it was a natural transition for me to pick up licensing at Middle as well. And then, I took the position at Purdue to come back to Indianapolis or, the Indiana area where I'm originally from, where my parents are. And Purdue, interesting enough, I graduated from Indiana University, which is the rival of Purdue University. And so I wasn't sure about being an alum of IU working at, our biggest rival, Purdue. I remember the first time I put on a Purdue shirt, I was like, oh my God, am I going to break out in a rash? Because I've only known, IU. And I think the biggest advantage that I had going into working at Purdue is that, when you're at IU, they tell you a lot of what Purdue is. And so I was able to go into Purdue and really learn and see it and not be prejudiced of what I had learned about about Purdue when I was at IU, and really go in with an open eye and learn about another great institution that's in Indiana. Indiana has some wonderful universities, and Purdue is right up there at the top of the list. So it was an easy transition doing the exact same position that I was doing at the NCAA, doing at Middle Tennessee. But I'm a Big Ten conference girl. I love the Big Ten conference. And so I was really excited about moving to Indiana, being in the Big Ten, and then seeing another great Indiana institution.
What were some of your roles and responsibility as trademark and licensing with Purdue?
Yeah, so when you look at trademarks and licensing at the collegiate level, it's really about what we say is the 3 Ps, and that is to promote the brand, to protect the brand, and then to profit from the brand. And so my main responsibilities was to create marketing and retail programs with merchandise and making sure that Purdue merchandise was in the top retail locations that matched up with our fans and our alumni. And so we created quite a few marketing and retail lines, merchandise lines, and then worked with retailers to place the product into market. And then on the other side of that, again, is to protect the brand. So as we were looking for infringement of our marks, people selling counterfeit merchandise or selling merchandise that they weren't licensed to sell, working with our legal team to make sure that we were removing that product from the market so that our fans and our alums weren't buying merchandise that wasn't authentic.
What is the process on the college level of getting trademark and licensing?
Yeah, so if someone is interested in producing merchandise using the intellectual property of an institution or an organization, at the collegiate level, a lot of the universities work with licensing agencies. At Purdue, we worked with the Collegiate Licensing Company based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And if an individual is interested in becoming a licensee of Purdue, per se, they would work with CLC to go through the application process. And then they would submit that application. CLC would submit it to me for approval. If we felt like it was a product that we did not have or one that we thought would be popular with our fan base, then we would approve that license. Once the license is approved, then they start production of the product and they work with retailers to get the product placed. It's very important that the licensee or the person that's interested in becoming a licensee has a great relationship with retailers so that the product can get placed out into the market for fans to purchase.
What is the process of whenever you see college jerseys with people's names on the back of it? What is that process like? And also, why is college athletics like stores not allowed to sell their names in the store?
Yeah, so the name, image, and likeness debate is hot and heavy right now. And I think that is going to be the biggest change in college athletics in the years to come is student athletes being able to profit off of the use of their name, image, and likeness. Currently, there are NCAA bylaws that prevent student athletes from placing their names on the back of jerseys and then those being sold at retail. So there are bylaws prohibiting that. And that's why you don't see student athletes' names on the back of jerseys at retail. We even go as far as not using current student athletes' numbers on jerseys as well that are placed at retail. We only allow 00, the number 1, and the last 2 digits of the current year on jerseys to be placed at retail. And again, that is to protect the eligibility of a student athlete, because if it is found that a student athlete is profiting off of their name, image, or likeness, then they're violating NCAA bylaws, and there could be some eligibility issues there. So that's why you don't see jerseys in the collegiate market with student athletes' names on the back of them, or a combination of name and number on the back.
Of course, with rules like that, are you able to, like, what happens whenever Chinese websites, like, let's say, for example, Todd Gurley, you can buy his jersey off of maybe a Chinese website, but you can't go to Georgia itself to buy his jersey?
Yes, so the difference is if they are a current student athlete or if they are a past student athlete. So as soon as they exhaust their eligibility or decline their remaining eligibility, then they could take a jersey with their name and number on it and have that at retail. A lot of the jerseys that come out of the Chinese market are what we call counterfeit merchandise. And so if we saw a current student athlete that had a jersey out in the e-commerce space or brick and mortar space that had their name and number on it, I would work directly with the compliance director of the athletic department and then the licensing agency like CLC. And we would create cease and desist letters and issue those. If the infringer doesn't comply with the C&D letter, then we take the next step of issuing legal action and actually suing and confiscating that merchandise.
Of course, in the future, do you see more, like, with the new rules of, like, with the new rules of like their branding and stuff like that, do you see you being able to buy jerseys of maybe former players in the college stores, not current players?
We do carry current, or I'm sorry, we do carry former players' jerseys. So at Purdue, for example, when Carson Edwards, the basketball player, was drafted by the Boston Celtics, we actually did his basketball jersey, his Purdue basketball jersey, with his name on the back and number. And we had to work through his agent as well as the Players Association with the NBA. So there is the ability to take past student athletes that are now professional and create their collegiate jersey with their name and number and sell that at retail. At Purdue, we also had Drew Brees' Purdue jersey. So you will see that at some of the bigger schools, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the North Carolinas, for both basketball and football, they will take some of their most popular former student athletes that have gone on to the professional rankings and create a collegiate jersey with their name and collegiate number and sell that at retail. They just have to work with the individual student athletes. I shouldn't call them student athletes at that point. The individual athletes, agent, and then the appropriate leagues, Players Association to do that.
Of course, when that happens, does the player get a little compensation, and then obviously the university gets compensation too?
Yes. So those are called royalties, and the athlete would get a royalty, and then the university would get a royalty as well. The athlete typically dictates what that royalty is, and it could range anywhere from 18% to 25%. The university royalty is usually 12% to 18%. So that product would have the university's royalty applied to it, as well as the player's royalty applied to it.
What are some things that you didn't know now that you didn't know before that you knew now about trademark and licensing on the college level?
Oh gosh, so much. So much. When I started doing licensing with the NCAA, I had zero experience in licensing. I had brand management experience, I had marketing experience, I had promotional experience, but I did not have the business experience or the legal experience when it came to trademarks and licensing. And so I think the biggest education for me was understanding how the product gets to retail, and then the business and agreement process of royalties, advances, guarantees, the financials behind licensing. And the collegiate licensing company taught me so much. They really showed me a lot and helped me in my education with licensing. But I think I didn't know a lot about that financial or business side of an agreement, of a university working with a Nike to produce product to then get to retail. Sideline agreements, like what are the coaches wearing, uniforms, and when to change those out. And then learning the consumer data, really getting to know the consumer as a customer and what would they like to buy or not buy. So it was a lot. I had to learn a lot when I first started in licensing, but it really is pretty fascinating to know that, even when you look at like an NCAA championship, when you look at the Final Four, when, that buzzer sounds and the confetti drops and the student athletes are going crazy and the coaches are going crazy, and, you cut to commercial. When you come back from a commercial, these student athletes are in t-shirts and hats that say, national champion. Well, those t-shirts and hats are licensed product. And for so I don't think many people think about, oh, wow, that's a licensed product. But that is. And so, to see you go through that efforts of working with the licensees to design that product, and it's held back behind, the stanchions of playing surface until that final buzzer, and then bam, it appears on the congratulations team. And then the fans want to buy it. So just to see that whole transition and the whole excitement around a t-shirt and a hat is what makes licensing fun.
When it comes to that, what is the process like? Let's say if the university doesn't win the championship and you already have the merchandise sell, do you just like trash it or do you like put it on sale?
Yes, so we had at the NCAA, it's called the locker room program. And we would actually produce product for the 4 teams. So let's use the Final Four as an example. We would, once we got, after the Elite 8, they start producing the product, and it's very quick. The product for the Final 4 teams that have advanced, that all 4 teams of product is shipped to the location where the championship is being held. We store it in protective measures. And then the day of the championship game, we just bring the 2 teams' product to the arena and we store it there. And then, if it's a tight game, if it's overtime and it's going to be like, we just don't know which team, we will move both sets of product closer to the court and have a staged team of volunteers ready to go that would maybe be with team A, and then another set of individuals that would be with team B. And as soon as that buzzer is ready to go, if it's team B that won, they start pulling the shirts and hats out, run out onto the court, pass it out. And then those team A volunteers take that product and move it back to a secluded location, a secure location. At the end of the championship season for the NCAA, and I don't think many people know this, but the NCAA is 3 divisions. So divisions 1, 2, and 3, both men's and women's in all 3 of those divisions. And so you're looking at about 750 championship sites a year. And that ranges from, first round, second rounds, quarterfinals, semis, finals. And so we have a lot of product at the end of the year. And when I was there, I don't know if they still work with this agency, but we worked with an agency that we would ship all of the non-winning team product to, and they would then send it over to third world countries. And those third world countries would use the materials to, whatever they would need to use the materials for, whether it's for bedding or clothing or any other industrial needs. But that's what we would do with the non-winning product. We would send it to third world countries.
What is the process like if a college athletic or a student athlete wants to trademark, let's say they're saying like, maybe like, for example, Tyler Hansborough with Psycho T. What happens if like he wants to trademark Psycho T in college?
Sure. So anyone can trademark a phrase or a saying. I think the key component is to make sure it's not already trademarked, because a lot of times if someone comes up with a phrase and they think they're being unique enough, but there might be someone out there that actually has already trademarked that phrase. You work with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and they have an application process that you go through. It takes about 9 months to a year from a mark to be officially registered, federally registered. So what I advise people to do if they're looking to trademark a phrase is to first start with the phrase and put a small TM after it. What that TM does is it establishes first use. So if I wanted to trademark, let's say, I tell my kids all the time, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So let's say I wanted to trademark that phrase. I would start using that in marketing materials on websites, however I was planning on using it, and I would place a small TM after it. That establishes first use, because when you do your application through the USPTO, you have to actually submit the date of first use. So if I started using that phrase with the TM on June 10th, 2021, that would be my date of first use. I would go through the application process with the USPTO. You have to identify which class you want to use it in. So if I wanted to use that phrase on apparel, that would be class 25. If I wanted to use that phrase for entertainment services, that's class 41. So just because you register a mark in class 25 doesn't mean it gives you protection across all the other classes. So in that situation, if I trademarked, you get what you get, but you don't throw a fit, in class 25 only, and then you decided to register that same phrase, but in class 41, we could both have that phrase registered, but in different classes. So you have to really make sure that, and you can't just register the mark in classes just to try to gobble up all the classes. That is not permissible, but you would need to make sure that you have the classes that you want the mark registered in, go through the application process. It's about $1,000 to register a mark. And then you have to submit specimens showing that you are using that mark. The USPTO will evaluate your specimens, evaluate your mark, evaluate your application, and then they will either approve it or disapprove it. A lot of times when they disapprove it, they give you a reason that they're disapproving it, and you can resubmit the application. But it does take about 9 months to a year. And then every 5 to 10 years, you have to show that you're still using it and then renew the application.
What was the transition like for you from going from being a trademark and licensing on the college level to now working in the NFL with the Indianapolis Colts?
It has been a lot. It's a big transition because, much like what we talked about earlier, from the collegiate side, you did not have to worry about players, their name, image, likeness. You did not have to worry about jersey numbers, changing jersey numbers, the draft process, and just working with a league like the NFL. It's a huge league. So just the whole difference from an amateur athlete to a professional athlete, and all the nuances in what you can and can't do with that professional athlete, it's a big difference, a huge difference. Although I think what has been interesting to me is now I feel like I can work with my old collegiate licensing directors and say, hey, this is where you might be going if the name, image, and likeness bylaws change for student athletes. Even as simple as autograph sessions. In the collegiate world, when a team does an autograph session, it's pretty much expected that a student athlete will show up to an autograph session with the entire team. It's very rare that you would do an autograph session with just one player. It's usually a team autograph session, the entire team there, and people are getting autographs of every player that is there. At the pro level, the autograph sessions are even done so differently. It's usually with just one player. The club has to pay the player to do the autograph session. And there's different rates per player of what they charge for autograph sessions. The player can choose not to do the autograph session. And so just even with the simplest of an autograph session, there's big differences.
Of course, on the professional level, when it comes to licensing and trademarks and all that, what happens, for example, like how recently LeBron James is going from the number 23 to back to 6. What happens in that instance when you already have those jerseys of him in the Lakers 23 or vice versa with the Indianapolis Colts?
So the store, our Colts Pro Shop, is run by Fanatics, and they have what they call an insurance policy. And depending on how long the individual athlete has been that number, or how long the customer has purchased that jersey. They can return the jersey as a credit to then purchase a new jersey. But I believe for us, it's 6 months. It might be even less than 6 months. If the customer has purchased a jersey within, let's say, 3 to 6 months, with that player's number on it, and then that player changes his number within that 3 to 6 months, that customer can return the jersey, get a credit, and then purchase the new jersey if they'd like.
What are some of your roles and responsibilities working on the professional level?
With the Colts, my primary responsibilities is with the licensing and the consumer products, but I also manage what we call our affinity clubs. So I oversee our kids club, our Blue Ladies club, our booster club, and our loyalty program. And it's been really interesting to see how each of those clubs are different, as well as what other professional teams do around their clubs. And so right now I'm doing a lot of research and looking at the other professional teams, how they manage their clubs, what's the membership process, what special events do you get access to with being a member of those clubs, and looking at those and seeing what we can do at the Indianapolis Colts to enhance our clubs.
What advice would you give somebody looking to get in the college trademark and licensing?
Great question. I think for anybody that's trying to get into collegiate sports at any position, that will allow you to see all the different areas within athletics and make sure that's really the area that you want to be in. I think an internship can be very valuable to not only see all the different areas, but maybe see what you don't want to do as well. Networking is still key. That has not changed. Networking is still very, very important. When I applied for the licensing position at the NCAA, I had zero experience with licensing, but I knew about 20 to 30 people that worked at the NCAA. And I knew that if they could reach out to the hiring manager and explain my experiences and move my resume from the top, from the bottom of the stack to the top of the stack, I had a good chance of interviewing and possibly securing the position. So networking is very key. I tell all of my interns and classes that I speak at or interviews that I do, reach out to people. If you see someone that is in the area that you're interested in, reach out to them, find out more about their path, find out more about that position, build a relationship with them. The sports world, it seems large, but it really is small. And a lot of times, if you are interviewing for a position at another institution, there's a chance I might know someone that works in that institution. So networking is still very key. And I think that today's youth and young graduates are very different now than when I was going through college. They're very proactive. They have a voice and they use it, and they are really go-getters. So that would be my advice. Don't be shy. You can't be shy. If you sit back, you'll be sitting the bench all the time. So go after it, reach out to people. If I can help in any way, reach out to me and let me know how I can help it. I think there's generally a lot of people within the sports industry that are interested in helping others become sports professionals. So do your research, learn, look for internships. There's a lot of internships out there, and network.
What advice would you give somebody looking to work in professional sports on the licensing side?
I think it's the same. I think it's the same advice. Again, network, learn about those positions, learn about those individuals. If you hear about an individual that is hosting a podcast or is part of some type of virtual session, join that session just to listen and learn more. There's plenty of sports organizations out there. Do your research on what sports organizations and clubs and trades organizations are out there, and join those. And I tell everyone, subscribe to D1 Ticker. So go to d1ticker.com and subscribe to that every day. Twice a day in your email, you will get the D1 Ticker report. It will tell you what is going on in college athletics, who's leaving, who got promoted, what jobs are out there, what's going on in the collegiate industry. So, do your research and get involved. Volunteer for sporting events. When I moved to Indianapolis, I actually volunteered for the Indianapolis Colts and worked game days with the Colts. And so that helped when I interviewed with the Colts, to be able to tell them, well, for 7 years, I worked in your press box. And so, volunteer, look for that local organizing committee in your state, in your city, and volunteer at sporting events.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm on LinkedIn under Erika Austin. Twitter, you can find me there. I think my Twitter handle, that's so bad, I don't even know my Twitter. I think my Twitter handle is EOZ1068, so EOZ1068, and Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, if there's anything I can do, just reach out. I'm on all those platforms and happy to talk to anyone.
Thank you again, Erika Austin, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Indianapolis Colts as a senior marketing.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
You're welcome. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again for your interview, and best of luck.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.